3,
All right,
2.
can one of you do a clap, please? Okay. Everything's recorded. Holler when you're done.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Love you back.
too. Thought you were going to listen.
No, I don't need to listen. I need to keep them quiet. So
Oh.
I'm gonna go this way. While
He's
y'all
going to be
do
on
some video.
Doberman patrol. Doberman duty, right?
Well, they're part of things, so if they're in there, they're in
Their
there.
nails. That's all that you would hear.
Yeah, the occasional bark. Okay, somebody go. What do you want to start with?
I want to know about like your earliest memories as a child.
Yeah.
I can start with where I was born. I and all 3 of my brothers were born in Mercy Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. Mom said it got to the point that, boys were only 18 months apart and then 17 months apart. And when she came around the corner in the wheelchair, the nurses said, well, here comes Weiss again. So I know we lived in Iowa, and I do remember going to a school up there. I don't remember the name of it or anything, but Mom gave me a perm, had a perm put in my hair, and kids were making fun of me. And then I remember one time we lived in this little place. It was like a motel, but you could rent the places to live for by the month. And we lived there for a while. I don't remember a whole lot more about Iowa. I know my youngest brother, Randy, when he went, it was time for him to go to school. He was determined he was not going. And Mom took him, they got him out of the car and took him across the street, the parking lot to the school, and he almost beat him back to the car. He was not going to stay. And so rather than fight him all the time, we moved back to Missouri. I don't remember exactly if that was the last time we moved down. I know I was in about the middle of 5th grade when we moved to Greenfield to stay. And one of my most vivid memories of being at school then, hadn't been there very long at all. We were out on the playground playing some game, and I think it was called Red Man something or other. And I was running because the whole team was supposed to run to the opposite side and not get caught. And I collided with one of the kids there and sunk my front teeth into the top of his head. Oh, my Lord, it scared me to death. I'm sure he remembered it for a long time. He may not remember it now, but I still remember doing that. It was awful because I was so bashful I couldn't hardly even talk to people, and here I had sunk my front teeth into the top of that kid's head. But anyway, went to school all the rest of the years until my freshman year, and we moved to Walnut Grove, and we started going to a parochial school, church school. Okay. And went back to Greenfield after about a year and a half there. Wasn't sure that I was going to get credit for my high school time that I had put in because that school was not accredited. So they had to see what my grades were and stuff as I went along to see if I was going to get credit for the year and a half that I'd been at the parochial school. And even though I didn't think my grades were that good, they accepted them. And so I was allowed to stay in the class and graduate. Graduated in 1969.
Nice. Did Great-Grandma Stump live in Iowa with you guys?
No, she always lived in Missouri.
Okay.
She lived in Corrie, and that's where all her kids were when they were born and stuff. My real grandpa died at the age of 37. And we were told he had kidney disease, and Grandma raised the 3 kids. She wouldn't even consider getting remarried until the kids were all out of the house because she said she wasn't going to have another man spanking her kids. So they had it rough. Grandma did washings, and she did whatever odd jobs like that she could do to help
make money.
Because the money that she got from Grandpa dying was not very much. And she never did learn how to drive. So anytime she got to go to town, somebody had to take her and let her do her shopping and bring her back. And I remember real plain Mom telling the story about when Grandma would come home it was a long drive back out to Kari back in those days. And if it was hot weather, sometimes Grandma would choose to bring them ice cream. And by the time she got home, it was so melted, it was dripping and stuff. But on other times, when she would come home, she always tried to bring them something. And she'd bring a little sack of candy. And she'd sit in the chair and pour the candy in her lap, and the kids would get down around her knees. And she would hand out a piece to one and a piece to the other and a piece until the candy was gone.
That's cute.
Yeah, so they didn't have very many frills back in the day. But I have that picture of Grandma and myself sitting on the front steps of a little house that they had in Kari. And the other day I found the paper where my real grandpa bought that place.
Oh.
It used to be a store, and I have the receipt where he bought that place.
That's neat.
And in the end, the last, several times back when I've been down that road, the only thing that was left standing was the steps, the cement steps up to the house. But that's some of my long back, but I really don't remember myself. I just remember I've got the pictures and stuff from the stories that I've been told.
So when you went to high school in Greenfield, you were shy, which to me is so hard to believe. 'Cause
I know.
you're so not that way now.
I know.
But you didn't play sports. Obviously, you didn't do anything like that. You didn't.
They didn't really have a lot of girls' sports that we could play at the time, but I was never a part of a sports team. No.
Because we were so involved in everything.
Now, when I went to nursing school, well, we can back up here. I started working, my very first job that I had, I was a waitress at Greenfield and made 50 cents an hour.
Whoa.
My mother had to be convinced to let me to go to work there, and it was only supposed to be for one Saturday. And it ended up, I think she was afraid some guy was going to catch my eye, and take me away. But anyway, I worked from 11 o'clock in the morning till 11:15 that night, the very first day I worked.
Wow.
And
How old were you?
I was 16, I believe. And it went well enough that I started working every other Saturday. And the going rate back then for a tip was $0.25. So if you waited on a couple, then you could just expect to see $0.25 for your tip on the table.
That's crazy.
And after I'd been there for a while, then I got a raise up to 60 cents an hour base pay.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was flying high.
Right.
So before I got out of high school, though, our high school counselor was asked to find 2 girls in the senior class that would be willing to go to the nursing home and work for 4 hours a night, just part-time. So there was another girl and I, we both worked at the restaurant, and the counselor asked us, and we both went to work at the nursing home. I would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and every other Thursday. The other girl would work every other Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But in addition to working at the nursing home, my 3 days plus every other Thursday, the opposite Thursday, I worked at the restaurant to do the Rotary dinners, because they had Rotary
Every other
week up there. And they were family style, and I would carry big platters of fried chicken, huge bowls of mashed potatoes and gravy and whatever vegetable and all the rolls that those guys wanted to eat. And it was a workout because they did eat well.
Yeah.
I bet. Gosh.
So then when I went to work the part-time job before I ever got out of high school. That was in December of '68. And then when I graduated, I went ahead and stayed at the nursing home and did full-time. Mom was working days and I was working evenings. And Dad had an old truck he let me drive to work. And I remember one night after I got off of work, because I was there till 11, I went zooming around the square to go home, and I got stopped by the local police just because they said I was speeding. Now, imagine me speeding. But anyway, I think they just wanted to stop me
To
to
see
see
who
who
you
it
were.
was.
See who you were, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Typical.
they didn't ticket me or anything. They just had to stop and see who I was, and then I was allowed to go on home.
They still do that.
So while I was working at the nursing home, before I got out of high school, I thought at one point that I wanted to be a beautician. And then I thought I wanted to be a secretary. And I took shorthand. Back in the day, they still offered shorthand in typing class and all of that. But then when I went to work at the nursing home, I decided on nursing. So I heard about at the time, it was the Missouri State Chest Hospital in Mount Vernon. After you had gone to work there, if you were accepted into the LPN program, then you could go through the schooling year with 2/3 of your regular salary. And I thought, well, I had a car, because by then, after I got out of high school, I'd bought my 1965 Chevy Super Sport Impala, and I needed monies to keep it going, of course, while I was working. And if I went to school, I'd have to have money to keep the insurance and all that going. So I went to work at the chest hospital, and I'd been there almost a year when I took the entrance exam to see if I could get into LPN school, and I did. So I got through that year, and we graduated in August of 73, because I started work in 71 at the chest hospital. Worked my year, went to school, so graduated in 73.
And you lived in Greenfield and drove every day?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I carpooled with a couple of other ladies. They were older, and they thought I was going to kill them every time they got in my car. Because when we rode with them, we kind of went slower than the speed limit, and when I drove, I got us there.
Some things never change.
So I worked at the chest hospital, and I asked one of the nurses a question about some blood gases one day, and she told me that she could probably explain it, but I probably wouldn't be able to understand it. And you talk about waving a red flag in front of a bull. I said, well, by God, somebody can make me understand it. I'm going to RN school. And so I did. Graduated from there in 1979. And I was working at Cox part-time when I graduated, and they offered all of us a full-time job, so I stayed there and worked there a total of 15 years part-time and full-time. Then I went to Aurora, to the little community hospital, and didn't realize until after I had taken the job that my job description said to either have a bachelor's degree or be working on one. Mm-hmm. So I got enrolled in the college classes at SBU. Graduated before Amy got into high school, even if it was on Saturday and Amy graduated on Sunday.
Yep.
But
Still counts.
still counts. I got my degree before my kids got out of high school.
So when you worked at Cox, I know you have told us in the past, like you worked on the heart floor and you did other things. What was your main, like when you did the blood gas stuff to go, did you want to do heart floor? Did you want to do?
No, when I first started, I wanted surgical. And they assigned me to a surgical floor, but unfortunately it was only for 2 nights a week when the regular surgical nurse was off. The other 3 nights I floated. And I floated to nearly every floor, every area in that hospital except peds and OB. Thank God, no peds.
Right.
And so I did get a good taste of a lot of different areas. It was a good experience, even though at the time I wasn't real happy about it. But I did get a lot of exposure to other areas, which has helped in other times past. So then they asked me if I would take the respiratory floor 3 to 11 charge position. And I did. And stayed on that floor for, it was several years, it felt like. And then they opened Cox South. And when they opened Cox South, they combined one of the heart floors and the respiratory. And so that's where I got more cardiac experience then, because we had actual heart
Yeah.
patients on that area. We had telemetry when I was on the respiratory floor, but it wasn't. That
As
wasn't the
in-depth.
specialty.
Yeah.
And then when we combined those two floors, it became more of a specialty. And I learned quite a bit of cardiac stuff then. So then I went to Aurora, and I started there just working PRN on the floor. But then when I took the office job, I did quality, infection control, risk management. I was as much of an employee health nurse as they ever had. And seems like there was something else I covered too.
Risk and
Risk
JACO?
management.
Did you do like the JACO
Yeah,
checks
I was
and all
Trying to help us get back in shape to be JACO certified again. But I left before the certification happened. And I had started working part-time every other weekend over at what was now Missouri Rehabilitation Center in Mount Vernon. And when I was to the point in my life where I was through working at Aurora, I went full-time at Rehab Center there in Mount Vernon. And I would have retired from there had they continued the hospital, but they unfortunately closed it in 2014. So I took early retirement, but I was only off a few months.
I was going to say, not very long.
And I went back to, I went to work at Lawrence County Manor, where I had worked in the past for a 5-year season of every other weekend. So I went back to the Manor every other weekend again, supposed to be, and they asked me if I could come in more days, and it kept increasing until I was to the point I was working 7 days out of a 14-day work period. And I did that until February of 21. And so I've been fully retired since then.
On one hand, it seems so much longer than 21, and on the other, it seems like not long enough. You know.
Yeah. And I did go ahead this time and renew my license. Not that I really intend to actively pursue any more nursing career. I'm just not quite ready to retire my license.
I don't blame you.
But in 2 years, when they're due to be renewed, I may just put
Might
them on
change.
inactive status. Because even if I went inactive, I could always pull them back out if I needed to work somewhere. So
Hopefully, that's never the case, though.
hopefully, but I've looked into doing some other things, but people won't. I don't think they want to hire me because I've got a college degree. But if I'm willing to work for a lesser wage, you would think they'd be offering me an opportunity
Right.
to do that, but they don't. So it's just where we are right now. And right now, I'm doing just fine.
So when you started at Cox, where you were living? Didn't you live in the
In the dorm.
Dorm, yeah.
Mhm.
And then you went to Burge Nursing School there
Yes.
for your LPN.
No, for RN.
For your RN.
I had my LPN through Missouri State Chest Hospital, but it was associated with Graf Votech in Springfield.
Okay.
And so during our LPN ceremony for graduation, we went to Graf Technical School
to graduate.
to graduate because we were a part of that group.
So you were like an extension center, kind of.
Oh, I thought it was Cox for some reason. But then you worked at Cox and all that. And then you got your bachelor's at SVU
Uh-huh.
and worked all the time. You're always working.
Well, that 1 year I worked 3 jobs, and I actually worked
Every day.
every day except 2 in the month. I'd work Monday through Friday at Aurora and work a weekend at Rehab Center. Do my Monday through Friday again, work at Lawrence County Manor. Monday through Friday and go back to rehab. And then I had, after my next 5-day run, I had a weekend off. So,
I don't see how you did it.
well,
Plus all of our stuff. And
I didn't do it when y'all were still in school, though. I don't believe.
Yeah.
I was in high school.
Were you?
Mhm.
Well, I know I worked at the Manor when you just got out of high school because I worked there I told the director I needed to make sure that I had enough money to pay for the little truck.
Mhm.
And that was what you were going to be driving back and forth to school for that first year. And after I got it down to where it was about paid for, she says, "Don't you think you want to buy another truck so you can stick around?" I said, "No, I think one's enough."
Okay.
We're good.
So I worked there 5 years the first time, every other weekend. And then this last time I was there, I started in July of 15 and went through February of 21. So it's going on 6 years that time.
Because it seems like you worked both of them when I was in high school, but I had been working at Sonic, so I was gone
Right.
too. So it was like, you know, we saw each other in passing almost.
So it was my last year at the Manor that I did 3 jobs because I'd started at rehab every other weekend. And I told the Manor if they wanted me, I could do 1 weekend a month, and they did. They wanted me to.
I bet it was my freshman year of college because remember I lived at home my freshman year. So
Yeah.
I bet it was the last year of high school that
For you, but it
Yeah.
would have been my sophomore year.
right. But that's why I was thinking I was in high school when you were doing 3 jobs. But I bet it was my freshman year because I lived there and commuted, which
Well, I started at rehab in 2001.
I remember when you retired. Remember the day you retired because we were all at the house, Grandma and Grandpa, and you were like, "Well, it's my last day."
October 31st of
Yeah.
2014.
Yep.
That's when they closed the doors.
But they'd ask you to stay on the whole time.
Right. I was one of a small group of folks that were asked if we would stay the whole time, just to make sure that if there were patients still left that hadn't been placed somewhere else yet, that there'd be nurses to take care of them. So, instead of taking care of patients, we packed up medical records and
Not all of them. There is a video that I saw on YouTube, and it's like what these people do. It's a group of guys, and it's what they do. They went to MRC, and they found old patient records. And
I'm sure because
I was like, HIPAA what? So,
we packed up what we could. I mean, when we
Yeah.
were there, but
But they also told us that the university was going to come and pick up, stuff and take
Yeah.
it back, and they didn't.
they only took anything they thought was any value.
Yep.
Yeah, I still don't understand why that couldn't have been rehashed and used for like actual veterans. That
It should have been.
They had talked about it several times. One point it was like, the spinal cord rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And then they changed it to brain injury. And it was all over the place. But I think as far as the government was looking at it, to get that place up to code, it would have been more money than it was worth, so to speak.
but they rebuild buildings all the time.
Right.
So either way.
Well, we have a certain landowner that wanted to sell his property to the government at premium price, and so
So that's how it happened.
that's how it got pushed through, I'm sure.
Yeah. Sad.
So I want to know about your boyfriends in high school.
And I didn't have any boyfriends in high school. I had guys I had crushes on, but they didn't know I was alive, and nobody would have known about them. So really wasn't anything to tell there.
So it was after high
Now,
school.
after high school, when I was
Yeah.
living in the dorm down at Mount Vernon, I was either writing to or calling, seeing guys about. There was 5 of them at one time.
Mother.
Quite the juggler.
But back in the day, you didn't start out just going with somebody, and that was the only one you
Right.
hung
Like it
with
is
all the
today.
time. And when I was just writing letters to some of them, well,
Do you still have any of those letters?
I don't know.
That'd be kind of cool to to see.
I don't
Because I know we found pictures,
Yeah.
where she'd went to I don't know if it was a dance or a ball or she was very dressed up.
Some kind of a dinner.
Yeah. So,
And Chris was pretty surprised when we were in the little Miata the other day, and he said something about the car being small, and was that the smallest car I'd ridden in? I said, I don't know. I dated a guy with a Porsche one time, and he said, you did?
And he was like, "Did you know that your mother dated a guy with a Porsche?" I was like, "Yes, I did." Yep.
I I bet you dodged some bullets in a way, though, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because he also said that you dated a guy that had an Impala
66.
around, yeah, the same year as
Yes.
yours.
I did.
Your sweet white leather interior.
Mm-hmm.
Then I dated another guy that I can't remember. He had a kind of a big car too, but I don't remember exactly what model and all it was.
What were you doing to not remember the car, Mom?
I wasn't into cars. I mean, I don't know. I still don't know
Yeah.
a lot of cars one from the other, but anyway,
Yeah, because you probably weren't even allowed to date when you
no.
were
In
living
high
at home.
school.
Oh
Yeah,
goodness, no.
Unless it was, could you date like boys from your church? Or
There wasn't any.
Oh, well, that's
There was
that sums
one.
that up.
If there was guys there, they came just for like a revival or
Just temporary.
special thing. There wasn't anybody that came. There was one guy that came down.
You were impressed with him,
Bless
I can
his
tell.
heart. Bless his little heart. He would come down, and I just got to the point. I thought, don't come anymore. Please don't come anymore. It just got to be quite the drag.
What was he like?
Really scrawny and
Homely.
quiet. And,
You're so funny.
wasn't-
Not her type at
Just
all,
no.
clearly.
no. And I decided one Sunday I was going to cook dinner or lunch. And I think it took me till almost the time Mom got home. By the time we got home from church and I got the stuff, I fried chicken, I fixed mashed potatoes, I tried to fix gravy, and I poured a little bit of the grease out of the skillet where you fry the gravy. We're supposed to pour a lot of the grease out when you fry the chicken.
Yeah, well.
And I started adding flour, and it just kept seemed like it was getting bigger, and I'd dip some of it out, and I'd put more flour in, and it just kept on. And I'd dip more out. I just kept dipping out stuff and putting more flour in, and it was awful. And I was so frustrated by the time I got that meal done. I thought, I'm not cooking again. I don't care. You can starve.
I think I've always felt that way. So
Not going through this again.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
So,
But you cooked a lot. I mean, for us, I always remember you cooking stuff.
yeah.
I used to stand at the farm, used to stand right there. There was like the doorway that went through to the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I used to stand there and lean against that and watch you cook, and you'd tell me what you were doing, and that's where I learned to cook.
I was going to say, you learned an awful lot of how I cook.
Mm-hmm.
Not me. No.
No.
I don't
No.
cook horribly. it's not I'm not Martha Stewart like Vanna, so. It is what it is.
Yeah. Do you have other attributes, I guess, that you just
I'm good at
hone
math.
in on?
I'm good at math.
So did you used to cook a lot for the boys, Randy and Paul, and
I didn't cook a whole lot at first because my mother did the cooking and I did the table setting and the dishes and that kind of thing. But then Mom was put to bed because we didn't realize, I guess, at the time, but she had fibroid tumors. And she was bleeding pretty badly, and so she was put to bed. And at that point, I had to take over the cooking. I had to go ask her. I didn't even know how you season corn and peas and stuff like that. And somebody had just brought her, before she went to the hospital, somebody brought her this big batch of mushrooms. And they were soaking in salt water.
Your favorite?
And she wanted me to cook them. And I said, I can't do that. And she said, well, you're going to. And so I ended up cooking them. Oh, my God, I couldn't hardly stand to touch them. That's probably why to this day I don't
like
want to touch a mushroom. They're nasty to me. Slimy feeling. And they were, the ones she had, they were finger-like.
like the morel?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're the kind that's real popular in the spring.
Yeah,
when
morels.
Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, I can't hardly stand to touch those things. But I cooked them for her, and I was cooking everything else. So that's kind of how I got started. But rocky way to start.
Trial by fire.
So I know, like Randy went into the Air Force. Did Paul, what did he do when he graduated? Did he just start working? Or?
Yeah, just started working. Paul never did military time. And I'm not sure, but I think his first job might have been at Zenith. He worked there for quite a while.
A long time, yeah.
And then after they closed, he and Randy both worked over at O'Sullivan's in Lamar.
Yeah, because that's where he worked when he hurt his hand
Yeah.
when I got caught.
In his back.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Yeah.
we were young, but I remember his surgery, back surgery.
And then they closed that plant. So at that point, he went to that CSR.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the automotive place in Springfield.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered this. Did they make Randy go into the military, or did he choose to go?
He was in trouble,
That's what I wondered.
and the high school people recommended that he go into the military to see
kinda
if it
wondered.
would help straighten him out.
Kind of wondered.
And that didn't work either.
Probably made it worse. I mean, just...
Well, it got him out into his own setting and stuff, because he wasn't in the service all that long, and he already had privileges to live off base, and that was not a good deal either.
Right.
Yeah, I
So
can imagine.
So did you guys go see him at the base?
we did. We made a trip to Rapid City, South Dakota, and that was an event in itself. We took the girl that was Paul's girlfriend at the time, and I took my friend, a female friend, along. And we had the weekend that we spent with Randy. Then, of course, Monday morning he had to be back on base and go back to his job. Well, we weren't very versed in the
Well.
Air Force traffic plan up there. So Dad was following a road, but unfortunately it wasn't a good road for us to be on. And we got out pretty close to some of those airplanes, and here come
The cavalry?
the cavalry for real. There comes somebody flying across the field in a Jeep, and there was a guy up in the back of it that had a gun. There were people running from other directions towards us, and the guy that was talking to Dad, and Dad wasn't hearing very well, the guy said, "Stop the car and turn off the motor." Dad didn't understand what he was saying, so the guy said it again a time or two. So finally, Dad got the car stopped. They made all of us get out of the car.
I
Now
can
we're
only
talking
imagine.
early morning. Randy had to be at work, I think, at 7. And South Dakota, that part was pretty windy, and it was cold. Even though we were on vacation, it had to be kind of warm months. So we all got out of the car, and I had rollers all in my hair. Because that was back in the day when I still put rollers in at night. And the guys on the ground there were talking about general this and general that and major, and I'm being a smart aleck, of course, because I don't realize the severity of our situation. Even though the guy came across the field with a gun.
Yeah,
And I
don't
said,
mind that.
"Oh, if I'd known I was going to see a general, I'd have taken the rollers out of my hair." And they just gave me looks like, "Oh my God, you better shut up."
So that's where we
You're like,
did
well,
it.
we're not
So-
joking, I guess. Sorry.
No, I guess I decided I better kind of tone it down. So in the meantime, I was freezing, and Mom had a sweater. I think she had took it out with her as she got out of the car and put her purse on top of the car. But I didn't have a jacket on, and one of those guys took his jacket off and gave it to me. He said, "Here, I think you're cold."
And they realized you weren't going to kill them.
Yeah. But they made Dad get in. They made us stay with the car.
And Grandpa left.
And they took Dad to the office, and they did their investigation,
Grilled him.
interrogation, whatever it was they were going to do, checking him out. They checked out the trunk. They, moved stuff all around. They checked everywhere in the car. They were afraid that we had,
Smuggling something? Or...
well, we were going to go in there and do something with those planes, I guess. And after we got back home, the commander of that base wrote a letter and said that they were sorry for the inconvenience, but we probably didn't realize had they, and it was one of those Air Force bases where, given the command, they automatically fire up the planes and take off.
Oh,
It was, I mean, it was a strategic
right.
air base.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you probably don't realize it, but had they received that command, every window in your car would have been shattered
Oh,
when we
You're all
started
just
up
tooling
this.
around.
Oh yeah, we're just out
Just
there.
cruising.
We're trying to find where Randy's supposed to go to work.
And he didn't.
He didn't know. He hadn't been on that base very long at
Oh,
all.
okay.
oh, okay.
So he didn't know
Where he was supposed to go either.
which was the right
Did he get in
road
trouble
for sure.
for it? Or
No,
anything? Okay.
no, we all got cleared, but it was an ordeal. I mean,
Sounds
these
like
guys
it.
coming bouncing across the field in a Jeep with guns out and running and yelling, and
Y'all are just sitting there in
Yeah.
rollers.
Hanging out.
we knew we weren't doing anything, but they didn't, and we were investigated.
It's good to know that you're good to go.
Right.
Dear Lord. I want to say only you, like, only you, because
Well,
there's some things that happen only you,
yeah.
and that is definitely. Did Grandma get an attitude, or was she?
Well, she was running her mouth, of course. She
Well.
always did, but wasn't to the point they hold her in or anything. But
It's kind of surprising.
She would have had her little bat.
I just, for some reason, in my head, picture her like cussing and not
Right, like
cussing, but
pointing her
like cussing and
fingers
fussing at him, and
and-
telling him where to go and what to do, and then
I don't think she grasped the gravity of the situation quite either.
probably a good thing,
Yeah.
because who knows?
I can just imagine them trying to arrest Grandma.
Yeah,
Lost her mind.
and this one over here making jokes, and
Right.
Yeah. Well, I knew we wasn't doing anything wrong, and so I thought it was kind of funny, and didn't take me long though to realize
decide it was a bad idea.
It wasn't too funny a situation.
They didn't think it was funny as you did. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I mean, for what it's worth.
I'm sure at the time, though.
In retrospect, it is funny, but at the time, with guns pointed on you, it was like, oh my, maybe not.
Only you. Only you.
That was the summer that I had took 2 vacations. Went to, I don't know where all we went, but we ended up going through. Lord, I can't.
When you went with Barb in that truck?
No, that
Oh.
was Geneva and Genevieve and Bronwyn.
Mm.
We went. What's that big place out in Colorado where you go and see all the mountains and steep drive up?
Oh, Pikes Peak.
Yeah, I went to Pikes Peak twice that one year.
I see it was memorable.
Yeah. Well, I'm losing my memory, so I can't get names.
So you just took a girls' trip and
Yeah,
And turned around and took another one.
yeah. Went
Oh,
with
wow.
family. Went the first with Janine and Bronwyn. Janine's dad let us use her truck, and we had a little Coleman stove,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going to do our cooking along the way, even if it was canned stew and stuff like
Yeah.
that. We were going to try to cook. Well, we got as far as Garden City the first night and set up the Coleman and couldn't get it to light. So from then on, it seems like we ate at about every A&W on the way.
Mm.
so that's probably why you don't want it very much now, huh?
Oh, I would eat it now if I could. And then there aren't any A&Ws close around here other than that one in Branson that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any other.
But back then they were more
All over the place.
popular, and we made use of them. Because we couldn't get the Coleman to work, so whatever. It's craziness.
So I want to hear about our birth stories.
Okay, I was pregnant with Amy and working night shift at Cox, and I ended up by this time, I was doing more time down on the surgical floor, and I was so nauseated all the time. I would eat supper before I'd go to work, might eat half of it and lose it, and then try to eat a little bit more because I knew I needed to eat. And then we got our supper break working night shift. It was somewhere around between like 2 and 3, something like that. So I would try some nights to get a hamburger and either a cup of Jell-O or a cup of ice cream and see what I could keep down. It was not pretty, but I did gain weight and Amy came out healthy, so all was good. But it was pretty much a miserable 9 months the whole time I was
You're welcome.
sick.
That's where it comes from.
I'm gonna blame that on
And-
the other party.
One other thing about that was different about me carrying you. I went to work one night and the weather forecast was that we were supposed to have flurries of snow through the night. Yeah, well, it flurried and it flurried and it flurried. And by morning, we had 14 inches of flurry on the ground. So, of course, a lot of people couldn't get into work.
So you had to stay.
And I got to stay. And finally, my head nurse got in, the one that was working on the surgical floor where I wanted to work. And I was back on that floor that night. And I don't remember what time of the day it was, but Dr. Crichton came in to see his patients. And after he was through, my head nurse said, "Doc, this woman is pregnant. She has been here already all night and all this day. Is there any way you could take her home?" So we only live like 3 blocks away, but he
Took you home.
took me home and helped me get to the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you were living in Nixa.
No,
In
Springfield.
Springfield.
Uh-huh. We were in a little apartment over, it was about 3 blocks away from the hospital.
Hmm.
That was before Nixa.
Before Nixa.
And then, when you were born, there really wasn't any big storms or any,
Just weird for the time of year.
yeah. There wasn't really any big hiccups that I remember.
And you were sick with her like you were with me, or?
I was sick with Vanna for 6 months. Yeah. And then we talked about having, if it was another girl, talked about having a third one to try for a boy. And I said, I'm done. I am done. I don't want to go through this again.
I don't
So,
blame you.
2 and done.
I don't blame you.
I understand. I understand. You don't have to tell me anymore.
Yep. But 2's enough anyway,
Mhm.
for me. I mean, I don't need a house full of kids to feel like a mother. And
Well, not anymore. You can't afford
No.
anything. I mean, even obviously when we were kids, it was a lot. Can't afford to take care of them. I keep having them, you know. So when you were pregnant with me, you knew I was a girl the whole time, or you
No.
thought it was a boy?
no, we didn't know. Back then, it wasn't real popular to find out the sex. In fact, back in those days, they didn't always do an ultrasound.
Yeah.
But,
Just if you were having problems.
yeah.
Because Dad had said something that they always thought I was a boy. So when I came out and I wasn't a boy, you know, it shocked everybody. Because
Well, you're supposed to be able to, old wives' tale,
Mhm.
supposed to be able to tell what you're having kind of by the way, shape of your belly. If, from looking at a woman from in back of
Mhm.
her, if you can see belly, then you usually think I think it's a girl. So if it's more of a ball in the front, it's supposed to be a boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why he thought whatever,
Okay.
but anyway,
I don't try to justify anything he said.
Yeah.
It does no good. But
but even if they would have told us what we were having, I didn't want to know. And I just thought that's
Yeah.
part of it. Just see what you got when they're
Mhm.
born.
I wanted to know.
You remember what I said to you when you told me you was going to have a boy?
No.
I said, "Oh my God, Vanna, what do we do with a boy?"
Well, that's true. I mean,
Because I'd had 2 girls. I said, "What do we do with a boy?"
he turned out just fine. So
You take care of him just like you do a little girl.
yeah. And he was so smart that
Oh,
couldn't keep up with him.
considering his start.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was his damn scary day. And Chris he didn't know anything about it at the time, and I couldn't say a whole lot because I knew you would know, and he didn't, and it would scare him. I could see that baby. I was so upset I couldn't hardly stand it. He was gray. They gave him an Apgar of 1, which the only thing he had was a heartbeat. He wasn't moving. He was gray. Wasn't breathing on his own.
Ugh.
And they put him over in the incubator, and here she is hemorrhaging, and baby's over there. And I'm standing there at the head of her, and I'm trying to maintain calm.
Which you did. I mean,
And I wanted to go see about the baby so bad, but I didn't want to scare them. It was...
He was in good hands. I mean, you knew he was
He
in good
was,
hands. Yeah.
but it was rough.
I
It was really, really rough trying to be calm and not have them panic. And
but I mean, you did it because I remember asking, where's my baby? And you were like, they just need to wipe him off a
they
little
got
bit.
yeah.
He's having a little trouble. They're just gonna make sure everything's
Yeah,
fine. Like,
gotta get
she
his
had an
t-
excuse for every time. And
Got
it
to
was
get his temperature
plausible.
up
Yeah, completely plausible.
and all
And I was
this.
just in the Bahamas.
And they're over there massaging his chest, trying to get him to breathe and
Mm-hmm.
get him stimulated and stuff. And I'm seeing all this, and I'm just like, oh my God. It was rough.
And see, I could just see like the backs of the nurses. And then Dr. Hessington, was like, oh no. So then it just kind of shifted back to what,
Yeah.
and it was a mess.
And then Chris later on, years later, he said, I'm mad at you. You lied to me. You lied to us. And I said, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't lying, but I couldn't tell you exactly what was going on, Chris. I said, they were working with that baby, and it wouldn't have done any good for you to be all upset and panicking because you were already concerned with Vanna.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made anything better.
With her hemorrhaging, and
It all worked out.
it did.
I just remember she was
Rocky
due.
start.
Oh yeah, she was due St. Patrick's Day
Originally, yeah.
originally, and so I'd already planned my trip. Like I couldn't get out of it, couldn't whatever, and so I was like, okay, she'll have the baby before I go on my trip. Cool.
Mm.
So St. Patrick's Day rolls around, and we're like, okay, baby. The 18th, 19th, and then I end up having to leave on the plane, and it's like almost like as soon as I got off the plane, off into the air, you're all having a baby.
Well, he was scheduled because I was sick the whole time.
Right.
And then I went to see Dr. Hessington, and it just so happened that the day that he was due, I saw Dr. Hessington, and he was like, do you want to, have this baby? And I'm like, yeah, tell me when. So he said, how about you come in on Sunday night? He said, eat a good meal, come in on Sunday, and we'll induce you Monday morning. So he was like a planned delivery, but I never ended up getting induced because I went on my own, so
your
to
own.
speak.
See, I thought your water broke when we left.
They broke my water.
Okay. I just remember, back then it was 2004, that cell phones weren't what they were, so we had to wait till we got to the hotel, and then couldn't call that night because it was a totally different time. And so the next day we called, couldn't get through because nobody was at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, they're doing whatever. Called that afternoon, nobody answered, and I was like, okay, So I kept, and so finally that evening, I think you were home. Was it the next evening? I can't remember. Anyway,
don't know.
either the next evening or whatever. You called and were like, oh, by the way, Vanna had Noah. It was rough. I'll tell you more about it later. I was like, oh, okay, okay. Then when we got home, we all got together and.
Back to when you were born, I was going to the doc for because when you get down towards the end, you go every week. I'd go to the office and the doc would say, well, everything's fine. I'll see you next week, if not before. Well, went again the next week. Everything's fine. I'll see you next week, if not before. I was so mad by then. I had my suitcase sitting by the front door because I thought, be ready to grab and go.
Mm-hmm.
I took that suitcase, and we had a 2-bedroom apartment, and I took it, I threw it on that extra bed. I said, any whore running around the streets can go have a baby when they're supposed to, but oh no, I'm supposed to be a fairly intelligent person, and I can't even have a baby right.
So what was my due date?
Oh, it was in May sometime.
Yeah.
But I think you went over their projected date by about 2 weeks.
I wondered if it was 2 weeks exactly or just, you've always said 2 weeks. I'll be late to my funeral. I'm a late person. all the
I was
time.
mad. I know I was, oh my God, I was mad. Threw that suitcase.
Yeah, I get that. You're done.
And I went into labor one night. I got up to go to work, get ready to go to work. And before I got ready, I lost my plug. And so we called the doc, whoever was on call, and they said, well, you probably ought to go to the hospital and be checked. So I did, and they said, well, you're not doing anything, so you can go on home. Or you go out and walk the halls for a while and come back, and we'll check you again. So we went out, walked the halls in the hospital, and walked and went back in, and they checked, and, oh, you're not doing anything, you can go home. Well, Mom and Dad had arrived by that time, and I said, I may not be doing anything, but I just don't feel like I should leave. They said, well, you can sit in the father's waiting room if you want. Just wait and see. And then after you've waited a while, we can check you and see.
Yeah.
And when I was sitting there, and I started feeling these pains, and I said, my pains are getting closer and harder. And sure enough, then I was in labor. And I was working night shift, so I was getting up probably about 9 o'clock to get around to have a bite of supper and go to work. And you were born at 4:35. And then I was working day shift when I was pregnant with you, Emma. And I got up to go to work that day and decided that maybe I
Today's the day.
have to divert. So I went in, and sure enough, I was in labor.
Worked all the way up to your...
All the way. Getting up to go to work on the day I had you both.
That's dedication I don't have.
Yeah, especially when you're big, pregnant, and miserable, and I'm good. Not good.
Yeah. But I didn't have very much time built up to be off.
Yeah.
So I was only off 3 weeks with you.
Wow.
And then 6 weeks with you.
It's not very long at all.
No.
Mm-mm.
And so Dad was an orderly there?
Uh-huh.
He didn't
Yes.
have any kind of
No.
nursing stuff yet?
He didn't go to RN school until, well, he went before you were born, but you were in the graduation pictures.
Mhm. I was little in the
But
pictures.
you were very young. He started school and hurt his back and had to have back surgery and take time off, and then got back into school and graduated.
Kind of surprised he did to finish, to be honest.
Yeah. The status thing, I think.
He was so...
Desirable.
Anyway.
So,
We lived in Nixa in that, well, you said Springfield,
we
and then
lived in that apartment when you were born, and we bought a trailer and moved it out to Nixa, to a trailer park, and lived there. I can't remember. Then we moved out towards Willard, and that's when you were born at, when we lived out by Willard.
Because then, what grade were you in when we moved to Stott City?
I was 7.
Second.
I was in 2nd grade.
We
And then I
moved out
turned
there
8
in
that-
80.
8. I was still 7, going to 2nd grade.
That'd
And
be
then,
87 then.
no, it was 88 because it was the last part of school. And then that summer I turned 8.
I know it was before I started. I went to Mount Vernon the whole time.
Because I was in 2nd grade and Miss Byler was my teacher. And when I walked in, this is Amy, new student. And they sang this song that I kind of remember it, but not really. And I just remember thinking, what have I got myself,
Yeah.
But she ended up being a really cool teacher, so it all worked out. But yeah, it was second grade. And Mickey Langley was the first person that said anything to me. She came up and was like, "Hey, are you new here?" Yeah, I'm new here. Thinking, and we were just friends, after that. But she was the first person that talked to me there. Wish I could remember how that song goes. Like skidamalingy rinky dink.
Skidamarinky doo.
Yeah, and they do these arm things, and I just remember thinking, what is going on? But
I know Nan was super impressed with the education that I received for my multiplications.
Oh my God! I'm still mad. I am old, and I am still mad about how they did that. She'd go around singing little ditty songs, singing them, and I'd say, "What is that?" "Oh, that's my multiplication." Well, it was the answers, but no idea of how you got to the answer.
Counted on my fingers.
no, we didn't do that at all. We did like the dots on the numbers, and you used your pencil and did the dots. That's how we
See,
learned.
every day we had a tape, and it was like, today we're going to do 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And she used to get so mad.
Yeah.
She'd be like, "What's 2 times whatever?" And I'm like, "No, put your fingers down.
Yeah,
Don't
I
use your
remember
fingers." I'm sorry.
remember that.
That's how they taught us. We never learned, 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2. We just didn't. We just sang our our jingle, tap it on our fingers, and that was good enough for them. I didn't know why she had such a problem.
I
Yeah,
said
we
there
learned
are
it the hard way.
there are numbers that you just should know. Like 7 times 7 is 49, and you don't do the finger thing. It's 7 times 7 is 49. Well, no.
I remember you one night sat down and you had Jolly Ranchers and other kinds of candy, and you were teaching our some kind of grouping math, and I don't remember exactly if it was like doing tens or doing fractions or whatever. And you were taking this candy and like, if I have a whole one of these, that's this. If I have, and you guys were there for 3 or 4 hours that night just with candy. And then I remember Vanna going, since we're done with this candy, can I eat some?
Priorities.
So I was like,
Effective
who
teaching.
knows if it soaked
Yeah.
in. But I remember, now that we're done with this candy, can I eat it? Because it was Jolly Ranchers and I think Jelly Bean, just random whatever we had. I want to say from Easter.
Probably.
But can I eat these? Because you were there like all night till she got it, till she understood what you were talking about. And I want to say it was fractions or tens, groups of tens or something, but she wasn't very old. I mean, the rest of the time at the table she was sleeping, so.
Well, and you guys, I want to know what it is. You keep saying that when I cooked something, if you didn't like it, you had to eat it anyway. But if Noah wanted something different,
We
I
just
always
tease
cooked
you.
him something. And I'm thinking, what did I fix that you
No.
guys didn't like?
We just
We're just
tease
giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to, because I had
I will
thought
tell
and
you
thought.
this. When we were younger, you would cook spinach and put vinegar, and you would have us try it once in a while. And I always
Take a
remember
bite.
thinking, she hates us because she's
Right.
cooking this. And it would smell like the whole house. I mean, I just remember thinking, she hates us. We did something wrong because she knows we don't like the smell of this. But now, obviously, that I'm older and I understand more.
But I'm just trying to want you to try stuff because
Right.
people's tastes do change over
Right.
time. But I have been racking my brain thinking
No,
of
we just tease you.
what did I fix that you guys wouldn't eat, because I don't remember that.
The only thing I remember you ever like throwing a fit about was one time we asked for something and I don't even remember what it was, and you fixed it, and then we're like, no, we don't want it, and you're like, no, you're gonna eat this because I made it special for you. That's the only thing I remember. It wasn't that we weren't gonna eat it. We just were
Right.
like, oh, we've moved on to something else, but no, we just tease you because
Okay.
you didn't cut our sandwiches into little triangles.
No.
We didn't get Nan famous sandwiches.
Yeah. That is the truth, though. She if you want your crust taken off, take it off your own damn self. No,
Right.
she's all
Yeah,
pretty
she's gonna make little stars and
triangles. Yeah,
stuff for 'em.
dinosaurs. Let me put the Doritos on just right.
Right?
But yeah,
He still
Yeah.
eats his sandwiches
But-
like that.
With Doritos on them. I'd
I'm
about
the
forgot
same way,
about
though.
those.
I do the same thing with Michaela. Miranda's like, I want that. I'm like, no. Mm. It's just, I don't know. No, there's
Well-
nothing that I.
Because you guys say that, and then I get to thinking about it, and I think, well, I don't remember fixing anything that you guys didn't eat, and if I did, I would have fixed you something different.
Yeah, no, we just give
No.
you a hard time about it. Except you would make stuff for yourself, like spinach or something you knew. Beets. Remember beets? Ugh. You'd open cans of beets, and you guys want to try?
No.
No. Still to this day, no.
Mm-mm.
But spinach you would do, and there's something else she used to make all the time. I can't think of what it was that we were like, no. Hominy sometimes. Not a
I
big
didn't
fan.
make that very often.
Yeah.
You didn't make spaghetti enough.
Yeah.
Right? Buscetti.
Spaghetti.
We were just talking about corn sandwiches the other day. I was saying how we used to make corn sandwiches as kids. And everybody's like, corn sandwiches? I'm like, yeah, you just take bread and butter and
Bread
put
and
corn on
butter,
it, fold it in
yeah.
half, and you got
very
a corn
simple, really.
sandwich. And they're like, that is not a corn
Yes, it
sandwich.
is.
Yes, it is. Especially with your spaghetti. Yes, it is. So apparently you've invented all kinds of sandwiches, corn sandwiches, famous Nan sandwiches.
Dorito sandwiches.
Dorito sandwiches.
Sandwiches.
Sandwich.
Sandwich. Yep.
Oh, yeah, and even if the chips were broken, we'd have to stand there and
Mm-hmm.
place them to where they'd fit the whole
Tetris
piece of
with
meat.
chips.
Yeah.
Yep. Not with us. She's like, either you want the damn chips or you don't.
Right? Here's
So,
your bag. Good luck.
I do remember, and maybe this is just not an actual memory that I have or just something you've told me, when we had that blue van. So I remember getting in the back of it, and it had that weird little table thing, and you would take a Big Mac and cut it in half,
Oh, Big Macs.
even in quarters, I think, and we would split a Big Mac, but we'd be sitting back there.
In the van.
In the
'cause
van.
It was a van, but it had that little table.
Mhm.
And so if you wanted to make it a table, you put the
Stand,
metal
yeah.
piece in there to elevate it. And if you didn't want the table, you take that out and put it down, and it fitted and made a bed.
See, I don't remember the bed. I always remember the table and like that almost like boat decking type carpet that was in there. But I remember we would sit back there and eat half a Big Mac with Doritos. And
Well, long before that, every time we'd go to McDonald's, Vanna wanted Big Mac, but I knew she wasn't going to eat the whole thing. So I'd eat it down to where I had just a little piece left, and she
Last
always
bite.
got the last little bit.
still is. No.
And I'd ask you if you wanted
Yeah.
some of it, and you never did. She
I just didn't
always-
know if I had
and
like
then,
made that up though. Like
then have to watch this one if you had a drink, because she loved ice. And she'd take that fat little finger and she'd, and she'd have her hand down in your glass. If you didn't have a lid on it and didn't watch her, she'd have her hand down in there getting her some ice.
it's a wonder you probably drank out of
And you wanted Koi and Tebet and I can't remember all of them.
right. No telling how many drinks you drank out of that she shoved her hand in that you didn't even know.
I didn't even see.
Yeah. How funny.
I think it's a family thing because Noah, we used to take him to Harvey's.
We were talking about the funny things that kid has said. I said, well, we're going to go to Me Mart in P Public
On I-4.
on I-4. And we're going to go to Nan's house. And then we're going to go to U House.
Mm-hmm.
And just all the little funny things he used to say that. And I was kind of laughing because he'd call me Aunt AE.
Mhm.
Well, that's going to be my initials now, AE. So I just kind of found the humor in that. So, Aunt AE.
Mm-hmm.